Hello, welcome to the Spider tutorial on functions. We are going to create our own functions, we are going to call them, we are going to test them, all in the Spider development environment. So what you see right now, I have Spider open right here. I have the IPython console, I have the file explorer here, these are the files in this folder over here. And over on this side I have a program that you are familiar with, basically the hello world. This program prints hello world. We already see here a function that we have grown a little bit accustomed to. We have seen it before, the main function. Basically we're defining the function main. Everything we want our program to do goes into the function main, and right here at line 12 is where the main function is called. So basically we have a function definition already right here, the main function, and then the only thing basic happening in our program is calling the function main. Calling the function main makes it so that we go inside the main and print everything that is inside main, everything that is indented. So in this case we print hello world. Let's save it. Let's call it func1 just for this purpose right now, and let's see if we can run it. There it is, func1 appears over here. Let's run it. Here's the path. We got hello world. We can also, just like anything we run before, we can right click, we'll show it in the Python console this time. Hello world is the message that prints. We can go back in here. So let's say now that we are printing hello world, can we actually create a function, our own function, not main, a function that we want to name our own name to print hello world, and then maybe from main call that function multiple times. So let's just go through the whole procedure of creating a function. So first we have to have the word def, that's the reserved word. You know, every definition of a function starts with def. Then we have the name of the function, and in this case let's call it hello. Okay, then we have the parentheses, and sometimes we're going to have parameters, arguments that we're going to pass as values to the functions, but we're going to talk about this a little bit later. Right now our hello function will have no arguments. We have the colon, and then as I press enter, notice that Python already indents. So everything that is indented under def hello will be part of the function. So let's put in here our print hello world statement. And actually before it, let's put in something else. So I'm using 3 quotes, and I'm going to say this function prints hello world. So anything that appears here on the first line with this quotation marks, like a string on multiple lines, will basically be the documentation about this function. So I'll show you how we see the documentation in a second. We'll see it here in the help tab over here. So now we have our function hello, and then we can call the function from main function from anywhere else. But right now we have the main function, so let's say we want to call hello one time. Hello doesn't need any argument, doesn't return anything. So functions that don't return anything, in order to call them, all we need to do is specify their name and basically the empty parentheses. So no arguments in this case. So we're just going to say hello, and that will be just it. Okay, I saved it, and I'm going to write again, and there it is, hello world. So calling the hello function triggered all the statements inside the hello function definition, and here it is printing hello world. Okay, we can also do this multiple times. Something like that, right? So hello world, hello world, hello world, right? We didn't have to always write this whole thing. We just called the function, and that printed hello world for us. Now if we want to see this function and what its documentation does, we can do just the way we did with turtle. We could say import, actually let me clear this window. We could say import the name of our program, of our module, we can call it in this case is func1. Okay, and then just importing it also meant that it was run, but we can also say hello. We can just call the function. Notice the moment I open the parentheses here, the help tab got activated, and we see in here the documentation for hello function, which is exactly what we put here between the quotation marks as a string. This function prints hello world. So we can just call the function once. You know, we can also call it as func1 dot hello, which basically does the same thing, right? So once we have imported this, we can actually use the hello function in a different program, a different string. We'll do that example later. So now we have our function hello. Let's see if we can make some modifications. Let's say instead of the function that prints hello world, we create a function that prints hello and then a name. Maybe we ask the user for a name, and then we print, I know, hello John, hello Amy, something like that. So let's create another function. Let's call it hello X. Okay, and then we're gonna kind of copy everything, but not everything will be similar. So this function prints hello. I'm gonna say here input name, something like that, right? So here we will have some name, some value, some string that we need to pass to the function when we call it, and then we're gonna end up printing hello, concatenate with the value of the variable name and with just the exclamation point at the end. And so in the main function we can still, let's say, have one call to the function hello, but then we'll have a variable my name where we'll ask the user enter name. Okay, and then we will call the function hello X next, and hello X needs to know which name to put in here in the printout hello statement. So we will pass this variable as the argument, which basically means that the value of this variable will be passed to the function, and this will become the value of this parameter here inside the function hello X. Let's try this. Let's save it again, and let's clear the screen and run it again. So first we have hello world, then we have enter name, and we could say something like John, and we would go hello John. Okay, we can also do this multiple times. Let's say instead of asking user for name, we would actually have a sequence of names, kind of like the way we've seen in the example in the textbook. John, Amy, Cecilia, and then once we put the column and press enter, this will also show indented. So we can say for all the names in this sequence, call this function with each of them at a time, one at a time. So first we should get hello John, hello Amy, hello Cecilia. There it is, hello world, hello John, hello Amy, hello Cecilia. There is no more input from the user. We commented this, but basically we can use the function inside a for loop to call it multiple times, and each time we would use a new name. Next, let's look at some functions that actually return values. So in this case here, both hello and hello x did not return anything. They printed something. One of them had no input arguments. One of them had one input argument. Let's take a look at some functions, both with one or more input arguments and functions that actually return values. So this is actually the example from the textbook. You will see it in the chapter about the flow control of execution and the main function. So in this example, both functions square and power return a value. When they return a value, that means that when we call a function, we can assign that return value, that result, so to speak, of the function to another variable. So in this case, we have two functions. The power function has two input arguments, b and p. It raises b to the power of p, and then it returns the new value. Square has one input argument, x, and then inside the square function, we're actually calling the power function, and we're saying, please raise x to the second power. When this function call ends and power returns into the square function, we will get here this result, x to the second power. Y will become the value of x to the second power. And then square returns that value. In main, we declare one integer n, a value 10, and then we say assign to z the value returned by the function square with the input argument n. We could have written here 10, that would have been the same thing. Okay? And then we're going to print that result. So let's save this one and run it and see what happens. We got 100 because in all this thing, the only printout statement was here, and in the end, we got basically the square of 10. Let's see how this works. You know, in the interactive textbook, we have code lens. Here we have this whole panel of debugging tools. So while we usually press the green button, this time we would press the blue button. And multiple things happen when we use the debugger in the Spyder IDE. You will see here in the console, you know, the code and kind of an arrow pointing with which statement will be executed next. We're going to check out our variable explorer and we're going to see our variables changing. But sometimes we will be inside the main function, sometimes we'll be inside the square function, sometimes we'll be inside the power function. So let's try this. Okay, so things are showing up here. The cursor is not back, it's basically in debug mode. So at the beginning, it's going to say, okay, I see the function power. Okay, once we move on to run the current line, basically that's the next thing that happened. It moves to 9. So it read the function power, it basically loaded it, but it didn't execute it because the things to execute are here from the 18 down. You have the function definitions followed by the statements that are part of the program. So then it said, okay, here's the function square. Then it says, okay, here's main. Then it says, okay, at line 18, I'm supposed to call the function main. Now, instead of saying execute the current line, we're going to say step into the function. So now we move back to 13, and we will execute 14, 15, and 16 next. No variable yet. The next line to execute is n equals 10. We have a variable n of type integer. The value is 10. Next line to execute is here. And we could, if we say current line, it would basically skip all the functions. So we're going to say again, go into the square function right here. Step into the function. And now what used to be n, the value 10 got passed to square, and now inside the function square we don't have n, we have x. X is 10. We can continue here, and we will see that y becomes 100, and then 11 will return the value of y. There you go. Now Z became 100, and then we're going to print 100 right here, and then that's the end of the execution.